grand hall of Silvercrest Castle glowed with firelight. Tall chandeliers hung from the arched ceilings, their flames dancing like stars above the gathered crowd. Music drifted faintly through the air, though most of the guests were more interested in gossip than in song. Laughter echoed, sharp and cruel in places like blades hidden behind smiles. Evelyn Hart stood at the center of it all, her white gown flowing around her like liquid moonlight. She had never felt smaller than she did at that moment. Dozens of eyes were on her, weighing, judging, whispering. She had grown up in the quiet valley villages, far away from the power of the court, and now here she stood, summoned to the Alpha King's gathering, a place where she did not belong. Her heart beat unevenly in her chest. She pressed her hands against the fabric of her gown, as if the thin silk could shield her from the looks. It was supposed to have been a night of honor. The king had called all the noble houses and clans together for a rare feast, and her guardian insisted she attend. Evelyn had hoped only to blend into the crowd, to sit quietly, to be forgotten. But fate had a different plan. The young women of the court had already chosen her as their prey. They had watched her from the moment she entered, whispering behind jeweled hands. Evelyn had felt the sting of their eyes, the way they measured her every movement. She did not speak like them. She did not carry herself with their grace. She had no family crest embroidered across her shoulder, no ancient name to announce. To them she was an intruder, a commoner wrapped in silk she did not deserve. And so, when the music slowed and the hall hushed, they made their move. One girl, tall and sharp-eyed, stepped forward and caught hold of Evelyn's sleeve. Another tugged at the edge of her skirt. Evelyn gasped, stumbling back, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd pressed too close, hungry for spectacle. "You don't belong here," one of them sneered. "Trying to dress like us won't make you one of us," another added, her hand tightening on the delicate fabric. Evelyn tried to twist free, but hands reached from every side, pulling, tearing, dragging the gown apart seam by seam. Gasps rose from the crowd, followed by laughter. The silk split beneath their fingers, the sound of it like cruel thunder in her ears. Her breath caught in her throat. Heat rushed to her cheeks, shame burning hotter than the flames above. She wanted to cry out, to scream, but her voice betrayed her, stuck in silence. Her dress, once pure and white, now hung in shreds, her arms bare, her dignity slipping away with each rip of the fabric. The hall grew louder, voices rising like a tide. Some laughed openly. Some turned their heads, pretending not to see. Not one hand reached out to help. And then, everything stopped. A shadow fell across the firelight. Heavy boots echoed against the stone floor. The crowd stilled, whispers cutting off like wind snuffed by a door. All eyes turned as the figure approached. The Alpha King. No one had expected him to move. He had been seated at the far end of the hall, silent, watchful, a man of dark presence and heavier authority. Dorian Blackwood, the ruler of Silvercrest, was a man whose name carried weight in every corner of the realm. His tall frame was wrapped in black, his shoulders draped in a heavy cloak that seemed to drink in the light. His eyes, cold and sharp as steel, locked on the scene before him. The girls who had torn Evelyn's gown froze where they stood. Their laughter wilted on their lips, replaced by fear. Dorian's steps were unhurried, but each one rang with power, the kind that demanded silence. When he reached the center of the hall, he stopped, his gaze sweeping over Evelyn's trembling form. Her hands clutched at the ruined fabric, trying desperately to hide herself, but her humiliation was plain for all to see. For a long breath, no one moved. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, Dorian unclasped the black cloak from his shoulders. The heavy garment slid free, its lining catching the firelight. He lifted it with both hands and stepped toward her. Without a word, he draped the cloak around Evelyn's shoulders. The weight of it settled over her like a shield, warm and protective, hiding the torn remnants of her dress. The scent of leather and pine clung to it, grounding her shaking heart. Gasps rippled through the hall. The Alpha King did not share his cloak. It was a mark of protection, of possession, of claim. By wrapping it around her, he had spoken louder than any words could. Evelyn's eyes lifted to his, wide and disbelieving. "My lord," she whispered, her voice trembling, but Dorian said nothing to her. His gaze shifted instead to the young women who had shamed her. His silence was heavier than any shout. One by one, they lowered their eyes, shrinking back into the crowd, their confidence crumbling under the weight of his stare. Then, at last, he spoke. His voice was low even, but it carried across the hall like thunder. She is mine. The words struck like lightning, silencing any remaining whispers. The hall bowed under their weight. Dorian's hand rested lightly on Evelyn's shoulder, steadying her, grounding her. To the world it was a claim. To her it was salvation. The rest of the feast passed in a blur. No one dared touch her. No one dared look at her with anything but caution. Evelyn sat at the king's side, his cloak still wrapped tightly around her, shielding her from every prying eye. Her shame, once raw and unbearable, began to ease under the warmth of his protection. Yet even as the hall returned to music and chatter, Evelyn's mind could not settle. Why had he done it? The Alpha King was not known for mercy. He was feared, respected, obeyed, but not gentle. To claim her so publicly was to change everything. When the feast ended and the hall emptied, Dorian led her to the quiet of the outer balcony. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and rain. The stars spread wide above them, endless and calm. "You do not belong to them," he said at last, his voice softer now, free from the weight of the crowd. "Do not let their cruelty make you believe otherwise." Evelyn clutched the cloak tighter around herself, her throat thick. "They wanted to break me," she whispered. "And for a moment I thought they had." His gaze lingered on her, steady and unreadable. "They will not touch you again," she dared to meet his eyes. "Why me?" For a moment silence hung between them. Then his expression shifted, the barest trace of something softer breaking through the stone of his face. "Because I see strength in you," he said. "Even now when you think you are weak." Her heart ached at his words, both frightening and comforting all at once. She had never thought of herself as strong. She had only wanted to survive quietly, to exist without notice, and yet here she stood wrapped in the Alpha King's cloak, claimed before all. The night stretched on, gentle and still. The shame that had burned her so deeply now felt like a shadow fading away. In its place was something new, uncertain, fragile but alive. For the first time that night, Evelyn breathed without fear, and in that moment, under the stars and the watchful gaze of the Alpha King, she began to believe that perhaps she was more than the whispers had ever allowed her to be.